Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing? Are you tired? How's your first day at GrowIT? By the way, this is the title of my talk. I'll be talking today about end-to-end testing with Cypress. I'll touch a bit on React. I won't focus mainly on React, but you'll see. Anyways, before I start, I want to introduce myself. My name is Nikola. I'm a freelancer at TopTal, and I also happen to organize Novi Sad.js. I'm here, I'm Novi Sad native, as you heard, and I mostly do Rails in React. And if you want to find out more about me, you can check out the website. It's the first link. And you can follow me on Twitter at @NikolaLSVK. And if you want to follow these slides live, or maybe later, there'll be a link at each slide where you can check them out. So let's start. I want to start by saying what this talk is. So in this talk, I'll try to touch on some high-level principles, like some ideas, some philosophies, some of the best practices that come with Cypress. But we'll also go a bit into some code. Like we will see how to actually write a test in Cypress and how the tests are run. And most importantly is that this talk is opinionated. So what you see here, you might not agree with it, you might agree with it, but in any case, I'll try to make sense of it. And what I like to tell you is what this talk is not. So this talk will not be a detailed Cypress walkthrough. So there's a bunch of resources online. There's extensive docs, YouTube videos, vlogs you can read. So I'll just try to touch about high level and some low level stuff. And I won't convince you that you should test. My guess is that if you're here, you're probably testing your apps. So let's just check, like, how many of you are actually testing your apps? Awesome, awesome, great. Almost everyone. And this is definitely not an ad, so I'm not paid to speak about this from Cypress. I'm just a user of Cypress, and I'm really happy with it. But if Cypress hears this, give me a call. I'm just kidding. I want to start off with this tweet. This is a tweet from Guillermo. He's a really famous guy in Silicon Valley. I mean, in the US, in the JS world. He's behind Socket.io, behind Now. Anyways, check him out. And what he tweeted something 2 years ago, in December 2016. And he said, write tests, not too many, and mostly integration. And I want to break this sentence apart. And this is really like infamous, famous tweet, I guess, 20 retweets. Yeah. So write tests. So why do we test? Why do we write tests? Well, I like to write tests because I want to make sure that the code I wrote, it actually works. So the logic I implemented, it actually does what it's supposed to do. But not only that, I want to also make sure that it will work in the future. So I kind of want to make my code future-proof. And one big thing why I'm also testing is I want to gain confidence. And I don't mean like confidence like approaching girls or like speaking at a conference, which is all great. I'm thinking more of a confidence when I'm about to merge that pull request, when I'm about to do that hard deploy. I want to be confident that my code will work on a staging or on production or anywhere. So I'm mainly testing to gain confidence. And maybe some of you are testing to walk like this around the office, like this Conor McGregor, like, yay, just deploy it to production, yay. Or maybe you're testing to be confident like Beyonce, like, yeah, just push to production, yeah, what? Anyways, there's this second part, second sentence of the tweet says, write tests, not too many. And when we talk about quantity of tests, we often talk about code coverage. And code coverage, it tells you like what portion of your code gets executed when you run tests. And this is the code coverage report from Istanbul. And if you're using Jest testing tool, this comes out of the box. So you can get code coverage out of the box. But when we talk about code, so code coverage is, it shows like what portion of your code get executed. And in this example, we can see that this else block of the if didn't get executed. So yeah, that's what code coverage is. And when we talk about code coverage, we often talk like how much of code coverage is enough. And that's a really, really hard question. And to be honest, I don't know. But I'm kidding. It really depends. So it really depends on your case. I won't give out numbers. As in the keynote, we heard like the guy went and he achieved 100%. I also did that in the previous company, but I just didn't get like enough confidence that it was at 100%, but something was still breaking. So the real answer to this, how much code coverage is enough, is it really depends. So if you're having an npm package, it probably makes sense to push it to like 100% and make sure that the package is covered. But if you have an application, it's really about finding the sweet spot. So previously we talked about confidence. So you should make sure to be confident, but not reach like 100%, or just because if you're trying to reach 100%, you're probably testing some implementation details. You're probably doing a lot of stuff which is not giving you so much confidence. Anyways. And then there's this third part of the tweet. So write tests, not too many, mostly integration. And why mostly integration? And this is where the talk gets really opinionated, so listen up. So before we say like why mostly integration, you've probably seen a testing pyramid before. Like, how many of you have seen this testing pyramid? Okay, a lot. But I like this one a lot because it's a smoking testing pyramid. It has a smoke up top. It's really cool. But at the bottom, what we have is unit tests. It's like a base for everything. Then we have integration. Then we have end-to-end tests or UI testing. And at the end, we have this smoke coming out, which is manual tests. And you can figure out what that means. And then I found this. I took this from Aaron Abramov. He's a brother from Dan Abramov, the creator of Redux. And he said this in one conference, like, there's no testing pyramid. There's like only testing square where everything's equal. Yeah, you might agree with that. But my personal favorite is this testing trophy, and I really like it. It's really cool. It's from a guy called Ken C. Dodds. If you haven't heard of it, definitely check him out. He's a really cool guy. He tweets a lot about JavaScript, about testing in JavaScript. And with testing trophy, you see we have, at the bottom, we have these static tests. I'll talk a bit later about what are each test. So we have static, then we have unit. A big portion of it is integration tests. And then at the end, we have end-to-end tests. And I have a bit better picture of this. This is taken from a testing JavaScript course. You should definitely check it out if you're into testing JavaScript or testing in general. And this shows a bit bigger part of integration, but why so much integration? Anyways, we'll get back to that later. I just explained like what are static tests. How many of you have heard of static tests before? Okay, one. Okay, couple. So it's a basic static code analysis, and one great tool for doing that is called Flow. So if you're using JavaScript in your project, definitely check out Flow. It adds type checking. So if you're not using TypeScript, this might help you. So how this helps me is we have this subtract method, and we have the second argument that it's 3, and it's warning us that it's not a number, so it's a string, and we define that it needs to be a number. So I never need to write a test that actually checks whether the second argument is a number. So it's really great. You should try it out. Another great tool for static tests is this Lint Tool. It's a linter. It also works well with React. There's a bunch of resources on how you can set it up with React and other frameworks. And what this tells me is, for example, I'm trying to pass in the variable named 3 to the subtract method, but it's not defined. And this is really cool because if I didn't have slint, I probably wouldn't get this error before production or something. And definitely, you should check out Prettier. How many of you are using Prettier in your project? Awesome. Rest of you, definitely check it out. It will save you so much time, like arguing about, you won't argue anymore about code style in your project, so check it out. Then after static tests, we have unit tests, and this is like a classic unit test, which tests Redux actions. So what we have, we're describing actions, then we're trying to check whether the add to do function is actually returning to us action object, so whether it has proper type and proper text. Then, and you would usually do unit tests. When you do unit tests, you would usually do them with jest in React. Then we have integration tests, and integration tests, their purpose is to check whether the specific components are interacting good with each other. So in this case, we're firing up a server, we're resetting the database, then we're setting some register data with username and password. We're sending that over to the API. And then in the API's response, we're checking whether the response contains the same username that we sent over to the API. So this is a classic example of integration test. And then at the end, we have these end-to-end tests. And for that, we're going to use Cypress. And you must be asking, what is Cypress? Well, Cypress is an end-to-end JavaScript testing framework. And you can get it by using npm install Cypress. And it's best for me to show you what it is. So I don't know how well do you see. But yeah, this is Cypress. So this is an Electron app, and what it does, it has this tab that says test, and it basically contains all of our test cases here. We also have this runs tab, which show us previous runs. This is another part of Cypress. It's a Cypress dashboard, which I wouldn't talk about today, but it basically serves so you can record your tests, like record your videos, screenshots, and then show it to someone or just read it yourself. But anyways, we're going to play around with the test tab. And right now, I'm going to run a test. So what we have here, this is a Chrome. So as you see, I click the test, and it opened up a Chrome tab. And what you can see on the left, these are our test examples, and in our test examples, we're trying to test whether the login is working. So, for example, in this test case, we're trying whether the login form is actually showing us some errors on logging. And I don't know how well you can see, but there is some username input and some password input. But yeah, that's basically Cypress. It's a test runner, and what's great about it is Cypress is so great because it takes snapshots and it can time travel. And what I mean by that is you can easily go back to each step of your test. So for example, at this step where we try to input a password, you can actually go back and see what happened like before and after you've inputted some data into the test input, into the password input field. And also you can see what happened after and before assertions, and it's awesome. And then what we have, since this is everything is run inside a browser context, so everything is run inside a Chrome, we can easily debug it. So this was a really big trouble if you're using something with Selenium. So let's say, for example, I'm rerunning the test, and I can see that, let's just zoom in a bit. I put a debugger statement in my code, and it just works. So if I open up a console and our tests run, it just stops there, and you have access to everything. I mean, you could achieve this with Selenium-based tools, but what would you have to do? You would probably have to sleep inside your test so the browser doesn't get closed. But this just works. We can continue. It will stop on the next test. Yeah, it's awesome. And this brings me to my next point. Since this is all run inside browser context, you also have native access to everything inside your app. So if you're using React, you can access basically anything. Like anything that's inside your code, you can get it while your test is run. But also, Cypress has some cons to it. Because it runs inside browser context, it makes it not so easy to talk to the outside world. What does that mean? It's not so easy to get the server running and, for example, see the database. But I'll show some examples of that later. And maybe for some people, one of the cons is that you need to write tests in JavaScript only. So that might be a con for you. And also, there's no cross-browser testing yet. But it's coming. Cypress recently rolled out a beta, and they said that they're going to support cross-browser testing pretty soon. And what's also great about Cypress is that besides it's so fast and it has this great test runner, it comes with this set of best practices. It kind of offers you some philosophies behind testing. And one of my favorites is testing the login flow. So I'm interested, how many of you are actually testing the login flow before testing each feature? Okay, couple. Yeah, you go to the login form and you type it in, yeah. Well, this is what Cypress actually doesn't suggest. So you should test your login flow only once. And I'll show this in the example. So this is how classic Cypress test looks like. So we have this describe block. We're going to describe the login flow. And we're going to check whether we get redirected to the dashboard on a successful login. So what we do here, we use this Sci object. You see Sci.visit. This is provided by the Cypress. So what we do, Sci.visit login, we actually go to the login page, get the input with the username, type in our username, get the password, type in the password, type enter. And what we do in the last two lines, we check whether the URL includes a dashboard and whether the H1 actually has, whether the page has our username. And what do you know? It passes. It actually works. And you can see you can see how we have the input of our username, input of our password, everything's there. But let's say we have this, we add another test. Like we don't want to test login flow anymore. We want to try and get to the settings page. But in order to get to the settings page, you usually have to log in your website. So probably how you would do this in Selenium test is you would do the same thing as you did with the login step. So you would go to the login page, type in your username, type in your password, blah, blah, get all that. And once you're logged in, you're going to go to the settings, and this will pass. But do not do this in Cypress. This is not recommended. What you should do instead is you should do something like this. So what we're doing here is we're using this sci.request, which is a method that you can send requests from your test with. So you can do sci.request. We're doing a post request here, and we're hitting our API. So we're hitting our API with our username and password. And then when the response comes, we're taking the token from the headers, and we're putting them, we're basically logging in our applications, except we're not using HTML form or something. We're not doing it through the UI, so we're doing it programmatically. And this is what Cypress basically encourages, that you should seed or do something using a programmatic approach, that you should take shortcuts. And after we do this, we can go to the settings page, and we should assert that our URL has settings in it. And this is a bit like maybe too cumbersome for you, like maybe it's too much to do in each test. Like, I don't want to do requests in each test. Like, how do I? And what you do in Selenium-based stuff, you do something called page object pattern. And page object pattern is like a bunch of classes and modules where you put little helper methods in that help you interact with the UI. And in Cypress, you don't do that. So Cypress did something else. Cypress is suggesting that you use Cypress custom commands. And that looks something like this. So we can extract our code for logging in. So our request for the API, we can put that and wrap it around Cypress commands add. And we can define a name for that command. And this will be login. And then after we do this, after we add a custom command, our test just becomes like 3 lines long, and we can use this across our app. So all we need to do is use sci.login, then visit settings, and then assert that we're actually on the settings page. And I don't know, this might be a little hard to do with Selenium, maybe not, but this is what comes out of the box with Cypress. And with testing login flow, only once it gives you more speed. Like your tests are no longer slow for repetitively going to the login page, typing in username, password, logging in, and doing other stuff. And you're also testing your features in isolation more. So you're more worried about your actual feature than logging in or doing something else. And your tests become less complex. Another best practice that Cypress suggests is that you should not use UI to populate your data. And this is closely related to the login flow. So, for example, let's say you have like an e-commerce website that sells conference tickets, and it has like users that can log in and stuff. And you need to test, for example, buying of the conference tickets. You wouldn't go in your test, you wouldn't go into the admin panel of your website, and you wouldn't click through the admin panel trying to add all of the stuff, right? Who does that? I mean, if you do that, you should not probably do that. You should do it in a programmatic way. And this is what Cypress suggests. Another thing that Cypress suggests is that you should clean up state before your test run. So in Selenium-based tools, what's oftenly encouraged is that after each test, you reset your database or you somehow reset the state in your data. But the problem with this in Cypress is there's no guarantee that this block will be run. Well, for example, let's say we're running our test inside our browser tab, like we did before, and it runs, and suddenly we decide to refresh the page. What will happen is this block of code won't be run, and this is a big problem because next suite of tests will get polluted state. It won't be clean. So what you should do instead is you should clean up your state before test run. So you can do something like this. You can put reset database or whatever you're doing. You should do it in before each block. And what you can do, and this comes out of the box with Cypress, you get this Cypress directory in your project with support directory and this index.js. And if you put some code in there, that code will be run before each test example. So, I mean, if you put before each block, but it will be run. Another great thing that Cypress suggests, and it's more related to Cypress, is that you should start your web server prior to running Cypress. So what you would basically do in Selenium-based tools, you would just run a command for your tests and everything will pop up magically. But with Cypress, you have to run it by yourself. And of course, you can go ahead and run it in different tabs. But if you want to do it from once, maybe you can do it like this. But please don't do it like this, because you cannot be sure that npm start, for example, command for starting your server, you cannot be sure that that will be finished before Cypress run gets executed. So what you should do instead, for example, is you can use this wait-on. This wait-on is a module. It's on GitHub. It's on npm. You can install it. And what it basically does, it takes one argument, and it checks whether your website is online, for example, on localhost. And after it's online, then you can do Cypress run. But my personal favorite, and this might come in handy with you if you're running your tests in CI, which you probably are, you can create something like this in your package.json. You can create a start script. So I usually have this set up in my project. So you have start, which starts your server on a port. Then you have Cy_run, which is basically a shortener for Cypress run. And then after that, you can define this start server and test. And this start server and test is a helper library from this guy called Gleb Bakhmutov. He works in Cypress. And this helper npm module receives 3 arguments. So your start script, your URL, and then Cy_run, which runs your test. And then you can easily do just npm test and just have everything run, and everything will be performed with npm test. And if you want to check out more from best practices, you should see their docs. They have really great docs, guides, references, everything. It's really great. They have YouTube videos. And next thing I want to talk about is Cypress and React and how well do they play along together. Well, probably because you've seen a heart here, it probably tells you they get pretty along well. You notice that in the previous examples when I ran some tests, I didn't actually show you the code behind it. So that's what's great about Cypress. It doesn't matter what framework you use, whether you use Angular or Vue.js or React, it will work. But in this case, I'll show some examples what you can do actually with React. You can do snapshot testing. I don't know how many of you are doing snapshot testing? Okay, awesome. You can do that. For example, this is a classic test for testing like homepage snapshot. You get a home, you get a div, you're trying to match the snapshot. If you want, you can also test your API with it to see whether it matches your snapshot. Also, you can test your Redux in Cypress. For example, your store. And what you have to do like a bit of a hack here. So if Windows Cypress is defined, you're just putting your store into Windows Store. And you can do this somewhere where you're creating your store, I guess index.js or something. And then when we expose it, when we put it into window object, we can go ahead in our Cypress test, and we can actually dispatch the Redux action. So we can go into window, store, invoke the dispatch, send an action object, and then we can actually go in the UI and check whether that object has been added. So whether the test dispatch is in a to-do list. And this is an example. We're testing here on to-do list app, and we're just checking whether we can play with it with Redux. Also, one thing you can do is you can import stuff from your application. So you can import add to do from your actions, and then just dispatch it later on with dispatch add to do more open source, and then go ahead in the UI and check whether a to-do list has actually been updated with do more open source to do. Another great thing you can do, you can mix the two. So you can, for example, go into in a to-do list and try to check the second to-do item try to check it whether it's complete. And if it's complete, you can check your store, get state, and see whether it matches your snapshot, which is awesome. And then what you can do is you can do something similar to another tool that's not Cypress. You can do unit tests in React if you want. So you can mount your components. You can check, so my hello state component is saying hello Spider-Man. Then we're invoking set state. We're saying, I don't want Spider-Man, I want to React. And then when I set state, I'm checking whether the state is actually React. And then later on, I'm checking whether the component actually has hello React. And this is awesome. And this reminds me of Storybook. I don't know how many of you are using Storybook. Have you used? OK. This is similar to Storybook. You can use it like that. So it's great. Yeah. And you can view your components similar to the Storybook tool. What you also can do, you can do file uploads. And what we're doing here, we're stubbing a request. And I'll talk a bit about it later. So we're stubbing using CI server and CI route. And at CI route, we're saying do a post request. When a post request happens on that URL, return 200. And later on, we're aliasing as upload. So we're saying that recognize that request as an upload request. And later on, as you see, we're setting a file from a fixture, then we're attaching it to an object, and then we're actually waiting for a request. You see this CI wait upload. You could not do this with Selenium. Like with Selenium, you would have to actually sleep a bit in your test or something like that, like to check whether the request was be done. Sometimes Selenium-based tools, they time out or something, but you can actually wait for a file upload to be done. So we can see in this example, at the third step, we're actually waiting for the upload. And then after the upload is finished, we're asserting whether the page has the upload success. And by the way, I left all of the links below for the examples, so you can check them out. There's a link for my slides there. But wait, most of you are like, you just stopped the server response. Like, how can you do that? It's not a true end-to-end test. And you're right. I stopped the server response, and sorry, I'm guilty. But that's what actually Cypress suggests you to do. So stubbing requests, you should do that for the majority of your tests. So you should, when writing end-to-end tests, you should actually mix and match. Like you should have one true end-to-end test without mocking with real requests, and then you should stub out the rest of the test. And this might sound weird to you at first. But you should also use real requests. Like you should not stop using real requests, real APIs, real database. You should use that, but you should use that sparingly. And you should test that for happy paths of your application, and you should use it for critical paths. And the rest of it should be stubbed. And I'll talk about that a bit later. But basically, what writing end-to-end tests in Cypress means, it means writing both end-to-end tests and integration tests. And this brings me back to my testing trophy, yay. And why so much writing integration tests, and why Cypress suggests you to write integration tests? Well, I want to talk about this is, as you go from static tests up to end-to-end tests, the prices of your tests go up. So static tests are really cheap to write and maintain, and as you go up to unit, to integration, to end-to-end, they get more and more expensive. And also, the same goes with speed. Like static tests are really, really fast, and then we have unit, integration, and finally we have end-to-end tests, which tend to be the slowest. And that's why, because you need to bring up the API server, you need to see the database, reset the database and stuff. And some of you are thinking like, yeah, but why don't we use static to test everything? But that's because like you cannot test everything with static. You cannot test business logic with static tests. And what's also important about this is, with this testing trophy is with static tests, like the stuff you solve with static tests, they don't give you much confidence. And we talked about confidence earlier. They don't give you much confidence that your code works. And as you go up the trophy, up to end-to-end tests, your confidence rises and you're solving big problems and everything feels like that it's working. And this is why integration tests, they provide the best balance of your money, your speed, and of your happiness or confidence or whatever. And that's why testing in Cypress is cheap, fast, and fun. And I want to want to show you. I want to write a quick test for you. I don't know. Do you see this? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So this is what you get like when you oh. Do you? Okay. Yeah. So when you install Cypress in your project, you get this Cypress directory. And when you go inside it, you get these fixtures, plugins, support. I mentioned support before. And you have this integration. And this integration is where all your tests reside. And I put in some tests for fun. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to test our conference website. Yay! We're going to write growIT website. And we're going to check in our website whether it lets us subscribe to the updates, so whether it lets our robot subscribe to updates. So it actually should not let us subscribe to update. Email updates. And what we're going to do now is, I can't remember the growIT website. Oh, okay, there it is. We're going to go and visit. Okay. We're going to stop the current one, and we can see our test popped up here. You see, yay, it loaded up. Let's go. Let's go to the speakers page. We're going to check whether the page contains that text. We're going to click it. Okay, let's go and see what's going on. Okay, it loaded up the speakers page. Okay, test passed. Let's go ahead and see. And there's this cool thing. There's this thing called Selector Playground, and it helps you select your input field here. So we're just going to copy the input field. We're going to type, let's say, test@gmail.com. And we're going to type enter. Let's see what's going on. So our website, so don't do this in real world examples. Don't actually load websites in your Cypress. Just use your development. Oops, something went wrong. Yay, the website is actually running good. Congrats. So we're just going to assert whether the page has something went wrong. Yeah, and this is great with Cypress. As you see, I'm developing a test, and the test is also running by itself, and it's really fast. I don't know if you could do this with Selenium. I know I couldn't in my setup, but yay, the test passed. We tried to submit the test Gmail, and it didn't work. It said, oops, something went wrong. And I'm hoping like you like that. I hope you like Cypress. If you want to try it, go ahead, do npm install Cypress, or if you want to put it in your project, you can do npm install Cypress -- save dev. And hoping you're feeling like this after this presentation, like you're like this guy, like no Selenium for me. And thank you. Please give me some feedback. I want to hear from you guys. And also one thing, stay. I want to give some presents later. If you're interested. And definitely check out, I'm organizing Novi Sad.js. If you're interested in talking or anything, just contact me or visit our website. Yeah, thanks. Do you have any questions? What?
Nobody has questions.
Well, I'll give presents. I'll give presents.
Yeah, let's skip the presents.
No, I haven't tried it actually. I saw that you put it in your presentation. Do you want to try it after this? Yeah.
One life saved.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you asked that. There's basically 3 approaches. As I showed before, there's this fixtures thing. So you can put like JSON files there. You can use that for stubbing, but what you can also do is you can see your database. So In the previous example, I showed that before each block. And in that before each block, you can actually invoke a command in your terminal and then like see your database and stuff. And the other one is just to mock the data inside a test, which is, I don't recommend that. Either use like the real database, either use like this directory called fixtures, which comes out of the box with Cypress. Yeah. Well, the main reason why to use Cypress would be is if you're testing JavaScript, like because you have everything there. Everything is inside the browser, as I showed before. With Selenium, like you don't have that. Like for Selenium, browser is like a black box, and with Cypress, you're right inside that box. You can do whatever you want. You can take shortcuts. You can do anything. So, yeah, if you're doing Selenium and you're testing JavaScript with it, definitely try out Cypress and see how it works out. It should definitely be faster, but it doesn't make sure that it will make untestable app suddenly testable. So, yeah. Yeah, well, it's Protractor is Selenium based, right? Yeah. Yeah, well, definitely try this one out. It's like everything is run inside browser context. Yeah, I'm mostly done with Selenium. I've done Cucumber, yeah, and I did Capybara. I don't know if you heard of it. So I'm mostly comparing it to that. What? Yeah. Well, you can still use Jasmine, where I suggest that for unit test, you use something like Jest, or I don't know if you use Jasmine, but this is like what Cypress is trying to solve. It's trying to solve more end-to-end testing and integration. I showed an example where you can actually do unit testing, but it's not recommended to do that. I mean, you can do that for fun, but it's mostly for integration and end-to-end tests. Yeah, you can use Cypress with anything that runs in the browser. Yeah, you can use it with Angular, Vue.js, React, anything. And I mean, I don't know in which framework this website is written, but I've still managed to write the test. So it's free. You can use it for everything. That's run in the browser.
As long as you can simulate DOM clicks and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
Angular, whatnot. Thank you very much. Please, another applause.